because I knew that if we could shrink that feature set, then we could make those features awesome. So, and in the end, I would say that, this is just an interesting aside, I would say that 25% of my dev time was spent on perf, right? That's another thing that is good to spend time on. So look at this, animation. Now this is running on my little tablet PC, not hardware accelerated, and yet I'm getting this kind of animation, right? Off of that. That actually took a fair amount of work because there's drop shadows going on there, there's all kinds of there's that reflection that you have down here, there's all kinds of craziness going on there. An uncompromising commitment to quality is the thing that will differentiate your application and your design. Okay, a little bit more. Oh, I got to close this out. Actually, I think we've got one more. Okay. One other kind of side note to this idea. When you sit down with a design, a lot of times the temptation is to try to create something that nobody's ever seen before. Especially because we're technologists, right? And we kind of have this premium on the new. So we have this idea that the thing we want to do is create something different, something that nobody's ever seen before. But the thing to remember that as a designer is that a lot of times the best thing you can do is you can capture and synthesize thinking that other people have done. And that thinking might come from your client, and it also might come from the world around you. And I think it's some version of this is what Pablo Picasso meant when he said this crazy thing. He said, good artists borrow, but great artists steal. And I love that quote. And sorry guys, this is a repeat for some of you too, but it's just too good to not repeat. And it's this great quote by Jim Jarmusch, and we won't read it all, but I do want you to notice this. He says, nothing is original. Steal from anywhere that resonates with inspiration or fuels your imagination. And then come down near the bottom where it says authenticity. Authenticity is invaluable. Originality is non-existent. So his point is that the act of stealing is the act of taking something and making it your own. And I think it comes back to that idea of inspiration that we talked about earlier. As you consume the world and as you make it your own, right, it's okay. What you're doing is okay. That's appropriate because that's what design is. Design is consuming the world and then giving it back to people in a way that's easier to understand and more applicable to the thing that you're doing. And then he says, and don't bother concealing your thievery. Celebrate it as if you feel like it. Or celebrate as you feel like it. In other words, there's nothing wrong with that. Tell people if you're borrowing their ideas, or I should say stealing their ideas, using their ideas. Okay. So design attack number 4 has to do with sketching. So we talked a lot about sketching last year. We talked a little bit about it this year with SketchFlow. There's a whole bunch of really great tools that people are using to move this idea of sketching forward. So I'll tell you how sketching has changed for me since last year. A year ago, I didn't really use the word sketch. I used the word wireframe. And I liked that word. And I would produce these documents that were kind of describing the information architecture of whatever it was that I was producing. I've abandoned that practice this year, and I've moved to sketching. And I would say that the difference between sketching and wireframing is mostly one of speed. And, that's benefit number 1, by the way, of sketching. Sketching is almost as fast as you. And what I mean by that is you are a smart person and you've got ideas coming to you all the time, right? And there's not a lot that you can do to capture those ideas that is going to facilitate, getting those ideas out better than sketching them. And so sketch with whatever tool you have. I keep graph paper right by my computer, and I sketch on graph paper all the time. I also like to use a tool called Balsamiq. I like to use SketchFlow. Also, Kevin and I are super interested in this idea of sketching. So we're thinking about what we can do maybe in the tool space there. So keep an eye out for that. That's really important, though, because the creative process that you go through has these 2 components to it. And this happens largely like at a large scale in a project where you have this diverging thought, right? And the creative thought is by its very nature, it is divergent. And what I mean by that is it's going off in all kinds of random directions. The nice thing, or the thing that makes that kind of thinking difficult, though, is the fact that there's really not, if you're just thinking, if you're just going off in all kinds of places, there's really not a good record of it. And so one of the main reasons that you want to focus on sketching and getting those ideas out quickly and succinctly is so that you can capture those ideas. Because then eventually that creative process is going to be convergent again. And what I mean by that is you've got to go through and figure out which of those ideas were good and why they make sense and rationalize them relative to one another. And if you have 20 sketches or 30 sketches, a large volume of ideas to go through, then you're more likely to pick the good ones, right? The other thing is, and this isn't in the slides, so I just thought of it, sketching facilitates communications with partners or with the people that you work with. I already mentioned this, that sketching allows you to produce a large volume of ideas, a mountain of ideas, as it were, right? And then last of all, the thing about sketching is that a lot of times when you're beginning to tackle a new process or a new project or a new concept, a new design, it's complex. And one thing that I've noticed, for me personally as well as other designers, and I think this is a sign of a beginning designer, is that you tend to shy away from complexity. And we tend to do this sometimes under the umbrella of simplification, right? But it's wrong. Because if you really want to simplify something, you have to start with the complex and then make it simple. Otherwise, you're not, that's a uninteresting effort in reduction, right? So when you sketch, you can gain familiarity quickly and tackle complexity. Oh, I guess I do have this in there. Good. I just added this. So now we're going to transition to new applications. So this is Seismic. So I had a really cool opportunity over the last couple of months, which was to work with Seismic. I'm sure you guys saw Seismic in the keynote today. We were also in the keynote at the PDC. Seismic's done this really awesome thing where they've taken this big dependency on Microsoft technologies because they've seen the speed and the quality of the kind of products that we can produce with those technologies. They wanted to have somebody who was really familiar with those technologies, though. So they've been working with me and some other groups to kind of jumpstart that process for them. So I had this great privilege of working with Seismic. And one of the coolest things, or one of the most, I guess, interesting things that I learned in this project is the power of sketching in terms of facilitating communication between you and a client. Typically, when I've worked with somebody with sketches with a client, I'm the one providing the sketches. The thing that I realized on this project, though, is that a really great thing that you can do is you can ask your client or ask your audience to produce the sketches for you. And that gives them the ability to take their best ideas and get them on paper in a way that they can communicate them to you. So these are sketches that one of my leads there, my contact there named Marco, produced for us. And these are for the account management screen. So this is how you add different accounts. And we had some interesting problems here, or interesting challenges, I should say here, because of the fact that we were supporting this plug-in infrastructure. So we didn't know exactly what the constraints of this design were. They'd done a lot of thinking about this. They'd gone through all, brainstorming meetings and all this stuff, and I wanted to benefit from that. And so Marco produced these sketches for me, and in the end, those sketches became this design. So this is the comp, and it's very, very close to what's actually in the application for the Seismic application account management UI. And that was really rewarding. So something I'd encourage you to do is sketch, and then also ask the people that you're working for to sketch for you. Give you their best ideas. It's a really great way to get your thinking on paper. Okay. The next technique, the next attack move that we're going to use is learn technique. So if you want to be a designer, well, actually, let's start with this quote. So do you guys know who Saul Bass is? I am talking about Saul Bass all the time these days, so sorry for the repeat. But Saul Bass is this awesome designer from the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s. He did like the Vertigo poster that I'm sure you guys know. He did all the opening sequences for many, many of the Alfred Hitchcock films. By the way, look up Saul Bass versus Star Wars on YouTube. It's super funny. It's the Star Wars credits reinterpreted by Saul Bass. I wanted to show that, but I couldn't figure out how to fit it in. Anyway, this is a great quote from him. He says, "Every design problem has a craft basis. If I had not myself fooled with cut paper, I would not have gotten the symbol." And he said that about this design. This is the movie poster that he did. And this is, I guess, is that German maybe? I did just notice that now. This is I think it's The Man with the Golden Arm. Is the name of this poster, or the name of this film. So you can see what he's talking about, right? He said he'd been fooling around with cut paper, and he ended up producing this. I think that's really cool because, obviously our technique has changed a lot. Like, most of you probably will not need to cut out paper, although a friend of mine just told me the other day that he'd been cutting out things for a project, so maybe there's more of that than we know. But technique, nevertheless, plays a very important part. And this, to be honest with you, is part of the big hike up if you're trying to become a designer, is it takes a little while to pick up some techniques. But I thought I would jumpstart that process for you today by showing you 3 techniques that anybody can master very quickly. And these are cool, by the way. I picked 3 things that I notice myself doing a lot when I'm doing a design, and they're kind of fun little things that anybody can do. So 2 of these are Photoshop techniques. One of them is a XAML technique. So I'll just show you how this works really fast.